Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 1998 Pontiac Grand Am GT. Up front is a 3.1 liter V6, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now I am super excited to be driving this Grand Am for two reasons. First of all, you don't see many Pontiacs anymore, and so anytime I get offered one, I want to film it. But the second reason is that this is sort of a lost era of Grand Am for me. I just don't have a whole lot of history or experience with this generation, and so I'm excited to dive into it with you here today. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. But let's get back to that 3100 under the hood. Well, it makes about 160 horsepower and 185 foot-pounds of torque, which is pretty good numbers for a smaller car like this. The Grand Am, at least in this generation, which this is the last year of this generation, wasn't all that big. So 160 horsepower is quite good, and I really enjoy the power from it. Now, some of them did have head gasket issues and other issues, but this car so far in its 147,000 mile life has been a little peach, and so I don't want to jinx anything. Like I said, paired to it 4-speed automatic, it's doing the job, it's fine, it's shifting. I don't love it, I don't hate it. It was kind of run-of-the-mill for the 1990s, and so that is that. Last but not least, of course, the Grand Am is front-wheel drive. So how does it feel to drive a Pontiac Grand Am from 98? Well, it drives like a lot of other GM products of the era. The 3100 is definitely very nice. It offers that little extra oomph around town where a 4-cylinder wouldn't quite do it. So definitely nice to see that torque. Steering is a little tight, but visibility is good, and that's all I care about. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 4 gauges. Off to the left is my coolant temperature and tachometer, and off to the right is my speedometer and fuel. Something I wanted to point out, and the owner wanted me to point out, was that the needles are still orange. This vehicle was garage kept its entire life, and so it never really saw the sun too much, and so the needles actually stayed orange where a lot of them have faded to yellow. So very cool to see that. On the steering wheel, we actually have radio controls down at the bottom. I absolutely love this. So retro, and for 1998, it's pretty late to be doing this stuff. So really cool to see that. Off to the left, we do have a climate control vent, gauge dimmer switch, and fog light switch. And moving on to the door, we have our power mirrors, power locks, and power windows. Moving into the center, we get 2 climate control vents and our radio. This is a Delco radio. Love seeing the factory radios in cars whenever I can. And I love all the equalizers. I love how retro all the equalizers are. I think that's really cool, and just a nice little touch here in the Pontiac Grand Am. Then we have our climate controls, fan speed off to the left, temperature in the center, where to send it off to the right. Very basic there. Then we have some cubby and storage space, and then we do have a cup holder, so we'll do a big friggin' bottle test, but this thing is so shallow and so narrow, and with the shifter and park, it doesn't offer a whole lot of tallward space, so I can't imagine this is used all that much, and so unfortunately it fails. Then we do have the shifter. It is large and in charge. We have an overdrive button on the side of it, and it works pretty well. I don't have any complaints about it. It's very like 90s styled, but that's not a bad thing. This is a product of the 90s. Then we get a second cup holder, and it suffers a similar fate to its brethren. Then we get a little center console and the seats. The seats are decently comfortable. I love this pattern on them, this sort of subtle hints of like red and purple and blue. I really love that. Very retro, and it reminds me of like older arcades or something of the sort. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 1998 Pontiac Grand Am GT, and a couple of things to note. First of all, that awesome 90s pattern also carries on back here, which is really cool to see, and I love looking at that. Something interesting is that you can kind of fold down the back seats, but it's just like the centers of them. The headrests stay in place. Very odd to see. But I do have power windows. I get these little Pontiac badges on them too, which I think is just a filler switch, but looks really cool. And overall, sitting behind myself, knees are not hitting the seat in front of me, head's not hitting the ceiling. In this era, late 90s, 2000s, I also had a Pontiac G6 growing up. The back seat space was always top notch in these Pontiacs, and I really love the fact that it's that way. Other than that, nothing really crazy. Let's hop out. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, around the back of the Grand Am GT. Pop it open like that, and we do have a nice big trunk. This is what I love about cars from this era, specifically American cars from this era. Absolutely lovely back here. You love to see it. No any crazy amenities or anything like that. Like I said, the rear seats do fold, kind of, but other than that, here's the trunk space of a Grand Am from 1998. Now we gotta talk about the looks. And again, I just don't have much experience with this generation of Grand Am. You don't see them anymore. And they're a little bit before my time. I was only born a year before this car was built. So to me, it's always cool to look at them because, I don't know, my eyes just aren't used to seeing them. So it's cool, but I don't think it's like outwardly pretty. I don't think if you hung it up in an art museum that it would get a lot of attention, but I think it works well. And you know what? For a car, sometimes that's all that matters. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving the Pontiac Grand Am GT from 1998? Well, this car's been great. First of all, it's just cool to show you guys a vehicle like this because you don't see them anymore. These cars are going away if they haven't already completely rusted away. This might be one of the nicest conditioned Grand Ams from 98 that's left here on Earth. So it's always fun to show you that. But what's interesting is having now driven Grand Prix from the late 80s and mid 80s, driving Pontiacs all the way up through the 90s and into the 2000s, and having recently driven a Pontiac G5. And so you can see here clearly in this 98 Grand Am, they are grasping onto the past. This car wants to be an 80s car. It has the funky buttons on the steering wheel and the chunky buttons on the radio and all the different equalizers. All of this together, it feels like a continuation of the 1980s because it so desperately wants to be, but it's not. It's almost a product of the 2000s. It's right there at the cusp. But in this case, grasping onto the past isn't such a bad thing. It's not sitting at a bar in its Letterman jacket and class ring while also having a receding hairline. No, it's actually grasping onto something better. It's trying to stay true to what Pontiac was. Pontiac themselves said that they engineered excitement, and when we got into the 2000s, that stopped being the case for pretty much everything besides maybe the G8, maybe the Solstice. But on the broad scheme, Pontiac wasn't exciting anymore. This car is exciting. It had little quirks and features, to borrow a term from a well-known reviewer, that kept it at least interesting. At least this car has something to talk about. This car brings something to the table, where the Pontiac G5 that I drove was such a dud and such a warmed over cobalt that it turned me off of the brand. Well, not this. Not this Grand Am. This Grand Am embraces the past and brings it into the future. And this particular example is doing that still here today in 2024. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Spencer for letting me take out his Grand Am. Spencer is a very near and dear friend of mine. I've reviewed a bunch of his vehicles in the past. He also is an admin and runs the GM front wheel drive page on Facebook. If you're not a part of that and you're interested or have a GM front wheel drive, you got to do it. It's one of the best pages out there. And Spencer is one of the best out there. So huge thank you to him. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.